The smell of machine oil and cherry blossoms. That's what Takeshi Yamada would remember years later, when the nightmares still came. Spring 1944. The Naval Air Technical Arsenal at Yokosuka hummed with desperate energy. Japan was losing the war, and everyone knew it, though no one dared say it aloud. In a cramped design office overlooking Sagami Bay, Takeshi hunched over blueprints that would change everything. "It's not an aircraft," his supervisor had said during the first meeting. "It's a flying bomb with a man inside." Takeshi was 28 years old. A brilliant aeronautical engineer who'd graduated top of his class from Tokyo Imperial University. He dreamed of designing passenger planes that would connect Japan to the world. Instead, he was creating the Oka, the cherry blossom. The Americans would call it Baka, the fool. The concept was elegant in its brutality. A small rocket-powered aircraft barely larger than a torpedo with stubby wings. Carried beneath a bomber, released near the target. Then a pilot would ignite the rockets and dive at over 600 miles per hour into an enemy ship. The cockpit was just wide enough for a man to sit. No landing gear, no parachute, no fuel for a return journey. No chance. "Yamada-san, the first prototype is ready." Takeshi looked up from his calculations. Lieutenant Nakamura stood in the doorway, one of the test pilots. 22 years old, with a boy's face and a soldier's eyes. They'd been working together for 3 months, making adjustments, solving problems that would help other men die more efficiently. Already? Takeshi's hand trembled as he set down his pencil. "I thought we needed another week for the control surfaces. The Admiral wants to see it fly tomorrow." Nakamura smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "May I see the final specifications?" They walked together to the hangar, their footsteps echoing. The prototype sat like a malevolent egg, orange and white, barely 16 feet long. Beautiful and terrible. Takeshi had designed every curve for maximum aerodynamic efficiency. It would be almost impossible to shoot down once it began its final dive. "It's smaller than I imagined," Nakamura said quietly. "Weight is everything. We removed anything non-essential." Takeshi ran his hand along the fuselage. "The rockets will give you 1,800 pounds of thrust for 20 seconds. That's all the time you'll need. To reach the target?" "Yes." They stood in silence. Around them, mechanics worked on other projects. Conventional fighters, training planes, things with landing gear and futures. The Oka sat apart, quarantined by its purpose. "My wife is pregnant," Nakamura said suddenly. "She doesn't know yet about the Oka program. She thinks I'm testing regular aircraft." Takeshi felt something crack inside his chest. "Nakamura-san, I don't." The pilot's voice was firm, but not unkind. "You're giving us what we need, a way to strike back, to matter." He walked around the aircraft, inspecting it with professional detachment. "The Emperor needs us. Our families need us. The Americans are coming. Yamada-san, what choice do we have?" That night, Takeshi couldn't sleep. He kept seeing the cockpit so small, so final. He'd calculated everything: thrust-to-weight ratio, control sensitivity, terminal velocity. But he couldn't calculate how it felt to climb into a machine designed for your death. The next morning, they loaded the Oka beneath a Mitsubishi G4M bomber. Nakamura would pilot the bomber, then climb down into the Oka for a gliding test. No rocket ignition yet, just testing the aerodynamics and controls. It should be safe. Should be. The bomber lumbered into the sky. Takeshi watched through binoculars, his heart hammering. At 10,000 feet, the Oka detached. For a moment, it seemed to hang in the air, a small cross against the clouds. Then it began to glide. "The turn rate is excellent," the radio crackled with Nakamura's voice. "Control response is immediate. This will work, Yamada-san. It will actually work." Pride and horror warred in Takeshi's throat. The Oka carved through the sky with lethal grace. Every specification he'd sweated over was performing perfectly. It was the best work of his life. It was an abomination. Preparing to land, Nakamura's voice excited now. Deploying skid. The radio went silent. Nakamura? Nakamura! Through the binoculars, Takeshi watched the Oka's nose dip. Suddenly, violently, the landing skid had jammed a flaw in the hydraulics he'd approved just 3 days ago. The aircraft struck the ground at 150 miles per hour and cartwheeled across the runway in a shower of metal and fire. Takeshi ran. His legs moved before his mind caught up, carrying him toward the wreckage. Black smoke poured from the crumpled fuselage. Mechanics were already there with fire extinguishers, but Takeshi pushed through them, burning his hands on hot metal as he tore at the cockpit. Nakamura was alive. Barely. His legs were crushed, his face covered in blood. But he was breathing. Did it fly well? He gasped as they pulled him free. Yes, Takeshi whispered. It flew perfectly. Good. Nakamura's hand gripped Takeshi's arm with surprising strength. Good. Fix the skid. The others, they need it to work. Takeshi nodded, unable to speak. Others. There would be others. Hundreds of others. Thousands, perhaps. All climbing into machines he was perfecting. All flying to certain death because he was so good at his job. That evening, as the sun set blood-red over Sagami Bay, Takeshi learned that Nakamura would never walk again. He also learned that the Admiral was pleased with the test. They would move immediately to full production. And he learned one more thing. A telegram had arrived at his family home that afternoon. His younger brother, Kenji, 18 years old, had been accepted into the Naval Flight Training Program. He would arrive at Yokosuka in 6 weeks. Takeshi stared at the prototype Oka, sitting in the hangar like a patient predator. The mechanics had already begun repairing the hydraulic system, making it better, making it perfect, making it ready for the next pilot, and the next. 6 months later, the Oka wasn't just working. It was devastatingly effective. Takeshi stood on the deck of the carrier Shinano, watching the pre-dawn preparations. 20 Oka units hung beneath their mother bombers like metallic wasps' nests. Around him, pilots performed final checks with ritualistic precision. They wore their dress uniforms, headbands with rising suns, and carried small pouches containing fingernail clippings and locks of hair, all that would return to their families. Yamada-san. Come meet the new pilots. Captain Sato, the squadron commander, gestured to a group of young men. They looked impossibly young. Most were 19, maybe 20. They bowed deeply when introduced to Takeshi, treating him with reverence that made his stomach turn. "The honor is ours," said one pilot, his eyes shining. "To fly your creation, to strike at the heart of the enemy." Takeshi had heard it before. They always said similar things, but he'd learned to see past the words, to the trembling hands, the forced smiles, the way they touched their good luck charms when they thought no one was watching. "The modifications you requested are complete," Takeshi said, keeping his voice professional. "The dive angle is now 70 degrees. Control response time reduced by 0.3 seconds. You'll have better accuracy." "Will it hurt?" one pilot asked suddenly. The others fell silent, shocked by the breach of protocol. "I mean, at that speed, will there be time to—" "No." Takeshi lied. The truth was, he didn't know. No one knew. There were no survivors to ask. "It will be instantaneous." "No." The pilot nodded, relieved. Takeshi wondered if he'd just committed a kindness or a cruelty. 3 hours later, the strike force departed. Takeshi watched through the ship's telescope as they approached the American fleet off Okinawa. The radio chatter was clinical at first. Altitude reports, distance calculations. Then, chaos erupted. "Releasing Oka units now. Target acquired the destroyer on the left. I see it. I see the carrier. Banzai! Banzai!" Through the telescope, Takeshi saw a distant flash, then another. Black smoke rose from the American ships. The radio exploded with reports 2 destroyers hit. 1 cruiser damaged. The Americans were firing everything they had, filling the sky with steel. But the Okas were too fast, too small, too perfect. Back at Yokosuka, Takeshi's workload tripled. The Navy wanted more Okas. Faster. They wanted improved models. Longer range. Bigger warheads. Better guidance systems. Every success demanded acceleration. Every dead pilot generated requisitions for 10 more aircraft. Takeshi worked 18-hour days, solving problems, refining designs, training new pilots. He learned their names, their hometowns, their hopes. Lieutenant Tanaka wanted to be a doctor. Ensign Yoshida wrote poetry. Flight Officer Kimura had a daughter he'd never met. Then they would fly away in his machines, and he would never see them again. He started keeping a journal. Not technical notes, he had plenty of those. This was different. Names, dates, brief descriptions. March 15th, Lieutenant Tanaka departed. Mentioned his mother's cooking. April 2nd, Ensign Yoshida showed me his latest poem. It was about cherry blossoms falling. The journal grew thicker. The list grew longer. Nakamura visited once, in a wheelchair pushed by his wife, heavily pregnant now. The former pilot's eyes went immediately to the Oka production line, where new units rolled out every day. "They're beautiful," Nakamura said softly. "I wish I could fly one in combat." "Nakamura-san, I mean it." He gripped the wheelchair's arms. "You gave us a weapon that works. That matters. My legs are gone. But because of you, others can strike back, can defend our homeland." His wife said nothing. But Takeshi saw her hand tighten on the wheelchair's handle, knuckles white. "The baby is due next month," Nakamura continued. "A boy, the doctor thinks. I'm going to tell him about the Oka, about what his father almost did." He looked up at Takeshi. "You should be proud, Yamada-san, not ashamed." But Takeshi was ashamed. Deeply, corrosively ashamed. Each technical improvement felt like another sin. When he reduced the dive angle for better accuracy, 16 pilots used it to sink an American transport ship. And 16 families received small wooden boxes containing fingernail clippings. When he reinforced the nose cone to ensure detonation on impact, he imagined those final milliseconds, the ship's hull rushing closer, the knowledge that you'd made it, that you'd succeeded, that it was over. Then one April morning, a letter arrived from his mother. Kenji had completed basic flight training. He'd volunteered for special attack units. He was coming to Yokosuka for advanced training. He was coming to fly the Oka. Takeshi read the letter 3 times, each word cutting deeper. His little brother, the kid who'd built model planes from paper and dreamed of flying, who'd looked up to Takeshi with absolute adoration, who'd said years ago, "I want to be just like you, brother. I want to build amazing things." That night, Takeshi got drunk for the first time in his life. Alone in his quarters, he stared at his journal, page after page of names and dates. How many brothers were in that list? How many sons? How many boys who'd once built paper airplanes? He thought about sabotaging his own designs, making them fail, malfunction, give pilots a chance to abort. But even drunk, he knew the truth. They would just be captured or shot down by American fighters. The Oka was mercy, in its way. Quick and certain versus slow and terrified. Or maybe that's what he told himself to sleep at night. A knock at the door. One of the junior engineers, breathless. "Yamada-san, emergency meeting. The Admiral wants to see you immediately." Takeshi stumbled to the conference room, still half drunk. Admiral Ugaki sat at the head of the table, surrounded by senior officers. Maps of the Pacific covered the walls, marked with projected American advance routes. "Yamada-san, your Oka program has exceeded all expectations," the Admiral began. 34 confirmed American ships sunk or damaged. The enemy calls them Baka bombs, fool's bombs. But we know the truth. They fear them. The officers murmured agreement. Takeshi said nothing. We're expanding the program, Admiral Ugaki continued. Training centers across Japan. 500 new pilots by summer. 1,000 Oka units by fall. He leaned forward. And we have a special assignment for you. We're selecting the best pilots, the elite. You will personally train them on the latest Oka Model 22. These men will target the American carriers directly. When do they arrive? Takeshi heard himself ask. Next week. The Admiral smiled. We've already chosen the first group. Exceptional pilots. All volunteers. All eager to serve. He slid a folder across the table. Their files. Takeshi opened the folder with numb fingers. 20 photographs stared back at him. 20 young faces, some smiling, some serious. He flipped through them mechanically, barely registering the names and service records. Then he reached the last page. The photograph showed a young man in a fresh flight uniform, standing at attention, eyes forward, expression proud. 18 years old, volunteered for special attack units. Specifically requested assignment to Yokosuka to train under engineer Takeshi Yamada, his brother, Kenji. In fact, at bursting Bardian, the room tilted. Takeshi gripped the table's edge, fighting down bile. That last one, Admiral Ugaki said, oblivious to Takeshi's distress, is your brother, correct? He specifically requested this assignment. Said he wanted to make you proud. The Admiral nodded approvingly. Family loyalty. This is what will save Japan. Takeshi looked at his brother's photograph. Kenji looked so much older than 18. When had the baby-faced kid become this determined young soldier? He arrives in 5 days, the Admiral continued. You'll have 3 weeks to train this group before their first combat deployment. Make them ready, Yamada-san. Make them perfect. Perfect. Like the Oka. Like the killing machine Takeshi had spent 2 years perfecting. He walked out of the conference room in a daze. Outside, the sun was rising over Sagami Bay, painting the water gold and red. In the distance, a formation of bombers practiced maneuvers. Oka units slung beneath them like patient death. 5 days. In 5 days, his little brother would arrive to learn how to die. And Takeshi, brilliant, dedicated, damn Takeshi, would be the one to teach him. Kenji arrived on a Tuesday morning, stepping off the transport truck with 19 other pilots. Takeshi watched from his office window, unable to move, unable to breathe. His brother had grown. No longer the scrawny teenager who'd left for basic training, but a lean young man with a military bearing. Yet when Kenji spotted Takeshi watching, his face transformed. Suddenly he was that kid again, grinning wide, waving enthusiastically. Takeshi couldn't wave back. The formal introduction happened that afternoon. The 20 pilots stood in formation as Takeshi briefed them on the Oka Model 22, the newest variant. Longer range, faster rockets, more explosive payload. Everything they needed to reach the American carriers. Everything they needed to die with maximum efficiency. Engineer Yamada, one pilot asked. Is it true you've never actually flown in an Oka? That's correct. Then how do you know the controls respond properly? How can you train us on something you've never experienced? It was a fair question, one that had haunted Takeshi for months. Before he could answer, Kenji spoke up. Because my brother is the best engineer in Japan, he said proudly. He understands these aircraft better than anyone alive. His calculations are perfect. If he says it will work, it will work. The other pilots nodded, accepting this, but Takeshi saw the unasked question in their eyes. If it's so perfect, why aren't you flying it yourself? Training began the next morning. Takeshi taught them everything: how to read the instruments in the cramped cockpit, how to time the rocket ignition, how to adjust the dive angle at terminal velocity. He made them practice the procedures in a grounded Oka until they could execute them blindfolded. The entire sequence from release to impact is 90 seconds, Takeshi explained. You'll separate from the mother bomber at 27,000 feet. Glide for approximately 60 seconds while you acquire your target. Then ignite the rockets. The acceleration will pin you back with 3 times the force of gravity. You'll have 20 seconds of powered flight. At 600 miles per hour, the American gunners won't be able to track you. What if we miss? Another pilot asked. You won't miss, Takeshi said flatly. Not if you follow the procedures. The Oka doesn't miss. Every evening, Kenji would find Takeshi in his quarters. They'd talk about home, about their parents, about anything, except the obvious. Kenji spoke excitedly about the honor of serving, about defending the homeland, about making their ancestors proud. Takeshi listened and said nothing. On the fifth night, Kenji's facade finally cracked. I'm terrified, brother. They were sitting outside, watching the sunset. Kenji's voice was barely a whisper. Everyone acts so brave, he continued. We write our death poems. We prepare our final letters. We smile and say it will be glorious. But at night, in the barracks, some of the men cry. I hear them trying to muffle it. And I think in 2 weeks, that will be me. In 2 weeks, I'll climb into your aircraft and never come back. Takeshi's throat constricted. Kenji, do you know what Mother wrote in her last letter? Kenji pulled a folded paper from his pocket. I'm so proud that both my sons serve the Emperor. Takeshi creates the sword. Kenji wields it. She thinks it's poetic. A family legacy. He laughed bitterly. She doesn't understand that you've created my coffin. Don't say that. Why not? It's true. Kenji looked at his brother, and in his eyes Takeshi saw naked fear. I'm going to die in something you built. Doesn't that bother you? Every day, Takeshi whispered. Every single day. They sat in silence as darkness fell. Around them, the base continued its relentless activity. Engines roaring, metal clanging, the machinery of death running on schedule. Tell me honestly, Kenji finally said. When I ignite those rockets, when I'm diving toward the ship, will I have time to be afraid? Takeshi wanted to lie again, to offer comfort. But his brother deserved truth. Yes, he said quietly. Probably 15 seconds between ignition and impact. You'll be aware. You'll see the target getting closer. You'll know. Kenji nodded slowly. Thank you for not lying. I've done nothing but lie, Takeshi said. To you, to everyone. I tell pilots, it's instantaneous. I tell officers, the program is necessary. I tell myself I'm serving Japan. He looked at his hands, the hands that had drafted every lethal specification. But the truth is, I'm just good at building things that kill people. Especially now. Especially you. Then stop. What? Stop the program. Sabotage it. You're the lead engineer. You could make the Okas fail. Give us a chance. And then what? Takeshi's voice rose. You'd be shot down by American fighters? Captured and executed as prisoners? The program would continue with someone else's designs. Nothing would change, except I'd be executed for treason. He grabbed his brother's shoulders. Don't you see? There's no way out. For either of us. Kenji pulled away. There's always a choice, brother. You just don't want to make it. He walked away, leaving Takeshi alone with the weight of that truth. The next week passed too quickly. Takeshi threw himself into training, making the pilots perfect, knowing that perfection meant death. He taught Kenji personally, making sure his brother knew every detail, every backup procedure, every way to maximize the Oka's effectiveness. He was signing his brother's death warrant with technical precision. On the 10th day, they conducted live glide tests. No rockets, just testing the release and control systems. Takeshi watched Kenji's Oka detach from the bomber, watched it slice through the air with predatory grace. His brother was a natural pilot. Of course he was. After landing, Kenji was exhilarated. It responds instantly. Brother, this machine, it's incredible. I could hit anything with this. The other pilots crowded around, equally excited. They'd felt the power, the speed, the perfect engineering. They'd stopped being afraid and started being confident. Takeshi had made them too good, given them too much faith in his machines. That night, Lieutenant Mori, one of Kenji's squadron mates, sought out Takeshi. Engineer Yamada, I wanted to thank you. Mori was 20, with a wife and infant son. Before training, I was afraid. Afraid the Oka might fail, that my death would be meaningless. But now I understand. Your aircraft is flawless. When I die, it will matter. I'll sink an American ship. I'll protect my family. He bowed deeply. My son will grow up free because of engineers like you. After Mori left, Takeshi vomited in his quarters. He vomited until there was nothing left, until he was empty inside. The final week of training arrived. The pilots were ready, technically perfect, mentally prepared, spiritually resigned. They took final photographs, wrote final letters. Some shaved their heads, others grew out their hair as a final act of individuality. Kenji did neither. He just came to Takeshi's quarters one last time. I don't hate you, he said simply. I wanted you to know that. I'm angry. Yes. Afraid. Yes. But I don't hate you. You're my brother. You did what Japan asked of you. That doesn't make it right. No. But it makes it understandable. Kenji handed him an envelope. Don't open this until after. Promise me. Kenji, promise me. I promise. They embraced, and Takeshi felt how thin his brother had become. All the pilots had lost weight during training stress, poor sleep, the knowledge of what was coming. One more day, Kenji whispered. Tomorrow we fly. The deployment briefing happened at dawn. Admiral Ugaki personally addressed the 20 pilots. American carrier group spotted near Okinawa. Multiple high-value targets. This would be a decisive blow. Takeshi stood at the back, his journal in his pocket, preparing to add 20 more names. The pilots filed out to their mother bombers. Takeshi had checked each Oka personally fuel systems, rocket igniters, control surfaces, warhead fuses. Everything was perfect. He'd made sure of it. He'd made sure his brother would die efficiently. Kenji paused before climbing aboard. Brother, wait! He ran back, pressed something into Takeshi's hand. A paper crane. Folded from a technical schematic, one of Takeshi's own drawings. You taught me how to fold these, remember, when we were kids? Kenji smiled, but his eyes were wet. Keep it. Remember that I chose this, not you. Then he was gone, climbing into the bomber, sealing himself into the Oka's cockpit. The canopy closed with a final, hollow click. Takeshi watched the formation take off. 20 bombers carrying 20, Okas carrying 20 young men to their deaths. He clutched the paper crane, his brother's last gift, folded from the plans of his brother's doom. They disappeared into the morning Sunday, and Takeshi realized he'd never asked Kenji what he'd written in that final letter. The radio room was suffocating. 30 officers and engineers crowded around the communications equipment, listening to the static-laced transmissions from the strike force. Takeshi stood in the corner, the paper crane clutched in his trembling hand. Alpha formation approaching target zone. Enemy fleet spotted. Count 12 destroyers, 4 cruisers, 2 carriers. Preparing for Oka release. Altitude 27,000 feet. The voices were calm, professional. Takeshi tried to identify Kenji's voice among them, but couldn't. They all sounded the same. Young men reciting procedures he'd taught them. Release in 30 seconds. Admiral Ugaki leaned forward, his face intense. Around him, officers marked positions on a tactical map. To them, this was strategy. Numbers and objectives. Ships sunk versus pilots expended. To Takeshi, it was 20 names about to be added to his journal. Releasing now. All units away. A pause. Static. Then, chaos. Oka 7 target acquired. The cruiser on the left. Oka 12. I see the carrier. I'm going for the carrier. Oka. 3 rockets igniting. Banzai. The radio exploded with overlapping voices, all shouting the same thing. Banzai, banzai, Tenoheka banzai, long live the emperor. The traditional death cry. Takeshi closed his eyes. But he could still see it. 20 Okas dropping away from their mother bombers. 20 pilots gliding in terrible silence, selecting their targets. Then 20 rockets igniting almost simultaneously. 20 small aircraft accelerating to impossible speeds. 20 boys becoming missiles. Impact. Oka 7 struck the cruiser amidships. Oka 15 hit on destroyer. Aka 3 direct hit on carrier flight deck. Secondary explosions. The radio room erupted in cheers. Officers clapped each other on the back. Admiral Ugaki smiled grimly. Confirmed hits? Still counting, sir. At least 12 confirmed impacts. Multiple ships burning. 12 confirmed. 12 of Takeshi's pilots had reached their targets. 12 families would receive official notification of glorious deaths. 12 wooden boxes would be sent home containing fingernails and hair. 8 had missed or been shot down. 8 deaths that accomplished nothing except adding to the carnage. Wait, transmission coming through. It's Oka 19. Takeshi's head snapped up. 19. That was Kenji's designation. The static cleared, and his brother's voice filled the room. Oka 19 to command. I've got a problem. The celebration died instantly. Everyone stared at the radio. What's your status, 19? The flight controller's voice was tense. Rockets fired, but something's wrong. I'm not accelerating properly. Speed is only 400. No, 380 miles per hour and dropping. Kenji's voice was steady, but Takeshi could hear the edge of panic underneath. The carrier is too far. I'm not going to make it. Takeshi pushed through the crowd, grabbed the microphone. Kenji, this is Takeshi. What exactly happened? Brother? A pause. The rockets ignited on schedule, but the thrust is wrong. Feels like only one rocket is firing. The second one must have failed. Takeshi's mind raced through the specifications. Single rocket thrust, not enough to maintain terminal velocity. Kenji would slow down, become an easy target for anti-aircraft fire. But there was another option. Kenji, listen to me. Abort the dive. Pull up now. With one rocket you can still maneuver. Return to the mother bomber. Return? Kenji's voice was confused. But there's no landing gear. No way to... You can ditch in the water. You have a chance. Takeshi was shouting now, ignoring the shocked stares around him. You don't have to die. Pull up. Silence. Long, terrible silence. Then Kenji laughed. It was a strange sound. Not happy, not bitter, just certain. No, brother. I don't think I will. What? Kenji, you're not listening. I am listening. For the first time in months, I'm thinking clearly. His voice grew stronger. You gave me an out, didn't you? You sabotaged my rocket. One of them, at least. Made it look like a malfunction. But it was you. You tried to save me. Takeshi's blood turned to ice. He hadn't. He would never. But even as he thought it, he remembered. 3 nights ago, inspecting the Okas, alone in the hangar. Kenji's aircraft. He'd noticed a loose connection in the second rocket's ignition system. Had stared at it for 10 minutes. Had reached out to fix it. Then what? Had he fixed it? Or had he turned away, left it loose, told himself he'd come back later? He couldn't remember. God help him. He couldn't remember. It doesn't matter, Kenji continued. Brother, I'm at 350 miles per hour now. The American guns are tracking me. I can see the tracer fire. Even if I pull up, they'll shoot me down in seconds. Or I'll ditch and drown before anyone can fish me out. Another pause. But I can still reach that destroyer. The one at 7 o'clock. It's close enough. I've got enough speed. Kenji, please, remember what you asked me? If I'd have time to be afraid? His brother's voice was calm now, almost peaceful. You were right. I've had 20 seconds to be terrified. To think about everything I'll never do, never see. But you know what? It's enough time to choose. And I choose to make it matter. You don't have to. Yes, I do. Because if I don't, then what was it all for? Your work? My training? All of it meaningless. But if I hit that destroyer, then at least... He trailed off. At least you didn't build my coffin for nothing. Tears streamed down Takeshi's face. I'm sorry. Kenji, I'm so sorry. Don't be. You tried to save me. That's more than most of them got. A sound like laughter. Besides, little brothers are supposed to make their older brothers proud, right? So watch this. I'm going to show you that your engineering works. Even broken, even with one rocket, it's still the best aircraft in the sky. Kenji. Target acquired. Distance 800 meters. Adjusting dive angle to compensate for reduced speed. Your calculations were perfect, brother. Everything you taught me, it all works. The radio crackled. Takeshi could hear the wind screaming past Kenji's cockpit. The rattling of anti-aircraft fire. 600 meters. They see me. They're firing everything. But I'm too close now. Too fast. Just like you designed. Kenji, please, just 400 meters. I can see the sailors on deck. They're running. Smart. Your Oka scares them, brother. You should be proud. I'm not, I can't. 200 meters. Here we go. Brother, thank you. For trying. For caring. The transmission cut off with a sound. Like thunder. The radio operator turned, his face pale. Confirmed impact. Destroyer. Destroyer is sinking. He split it in half. The room erupted again. Victory. Success. The Admiral was already calling for more Okas, more pilots, more. Takeshi didn't hear any of it. He stood frozen, the microphone dead in his hand, his brother's last words echoing in his ears. Thank you. He'd thanked him. Thanked Takeshi for building the machine that killed him. Someone tried to congratulate him. Takeshi pushed past them, stumbled out of the radio room, barely made it outside, before collapsing against the hangar wall. The paper crane fell from his nerveless fingers. He picked it up carefully, unfolded it with shaking hands. The schematic inside showed the Oka's rocket ignition system. Kenji had chosen this drawing specifically. Had he known? Had he seen the loose connection and understood what it meant? Takeshi would never know. He remembered the envelope Kenji's final letter. With trembling hands, he opened it. Brother, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. I hope I flew well. I hope I made you proud, even though I know this breaks your heart. I know what you've been going through. I've seen it in your eyes. The guilt, the shame, the weight of all those names. You think you're a murderer, that every Oka that flies carries your sin. You're wrong. You didn't start this war. You didn't ask for this assignment. You did what Japan demanded. Of brilliant minds, you solved an impossible problem. You gave desperate men a weapon that works. That matters. I chose to volunteer. I chose to request your base. I chose to climb into that cockpit. Not because of propaganda or honor or the Emperor, but because if I have to die, and we both know I do, one way or another, then I'd rather it be in something my brother built. Something I know is perfect. You've been carrying all our deaths alone. Stop. We made our choices. Every pilot in every Oka knew exactly what they were doing. Your engineering didn't force us. It just gave us the means to do what we already chose. After the war, and there will be an after. Brother, even if we don't live to see it, someone will ask you about the Oka, about the kamikaze pilots. They'll want to know if we were brainwashed, coerced, insane. Tell them the truth. We were terrified, human, and ultimately willing. Tell them about Tanaka, who wanted to be a doctor, about Yoshida's poetry, about Mori's infant son, about your little brother who loved building paper airplanes. Tell them we weren't fools. We were just boys who ran out of time. And brother, forgive yourself. Please, you didn't kill us. The war did that. Live. Design beautiful things. Have children. Show them how to fold paper cranes. And when they ask what you did in the war, tell them you tried to save your brother. That's what I'll tell our ancestors when I see them. Your brother, Kenji. P. S. If you did sabotage my rocket, thank you. It gave me 20 extra seconds to say goodbye. Takeshi read it 3 times. Then, once more. The paper trembled in his hands. Around him, the base continued its relentless activity. More Okas being loaded. More pilots being trained. The machinery of death grinding forward. Unstoppable. Inevitable. But something had broken loose inside Takeshi. Or maybe something had finally broken free. He walked to his quarters, pulled out his journal page after page of names and dates. 463 names. 463 boys who'd flown his aircraft to their deaths. He picked up a pen and wrote one more. Flight Officer Kenji Yamada, the 15th of October, 1945. Wanted to build paper airplanes. Chose to die in his brother's machine. Saved his brother's soul. With forgiveness. Then, slowly, he began reading through every name. All 463. Speaking them aloud. One by one. Giving them voice. Remembering what he could about each their hometowns, their families, their dreams. It took 3 hours. When he finished, the sun was setting over Sagami Bay. In 2 weeks, the Emperor would announce Japan's surrender. The war would be over. The Oka program would be terminated. 464 pilots had flown Takeshi's aircraft. None had returned. But they had chosen. Kenji was right about that. They'd all chosen, in their own ways, to climb into machines designed for death. And Takeshi had done what they asked, made those machines work. It didn't erase the guilt. Nothing ever would. But it was truth. And truth was all he had left. He carefully folded Kenji's letter and placed it in his journal, along with a refolded paper crane. Then he walked to the hangar where the remaining Okas sat, waiting for pilots who would never come. Takeshi placed his hand on the nearest cockpit, the small, cramped space where boys became weapons. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "To all of you. I'm sorry you had to choose. I'm sorry I made it possible." The aircraft sat silent, no longer predatory. Just machines. Tools that had served their terrible purpose. And in his pocket, the journal full of names, not victims, Kenji had taught him, but volunteers. Boys who'd run out of time. Boys who'd chosen to matter in the only way left to them. Takeshi Yamada would carry those names for the rest of his life. Would speak them aloud every year on the anniversary. Would ensure they weren't forgotten as fools or fanatics, but as the terrified, brave, ultimately human boys they'd been. It was the least he could do. It was all he could do. It would have to be enough. Epilogue. In 1953, Takeshi Yamada opened a small aircraft manufacturing company in Osaka. They built civilian planes, small, efficient craft for cargo and passenger service. Nothing fast, nothing weaponized. Just simple machines that brought people together instead of tearing them apart. He never married, never had children, but every year on October 15th he would fold 464 paper cranes and float them on Sagami Bay. One for every pilot, one for his brother. When journalists asked about his wartime work, he told them the truth. "I built effective weapons. Boys died in them. They chose to fly. I chose to remember." In his office, he kept a framed photograph. Kenji, in his flight suit, standing next to an Oka, smiling that boy's smile that never quite reached his eyes. And beneath it, in careful script, the last words of his brother's letter. "You didn't kill us. The war did that." It wasn't forgiveness. Not entirely. But it was permission to keep living, to keep building, to keep folding paper cranes and whispering names to the sea. Sometimes that has to be enough.